My name is Scott Ragsdale of Scott Ragsdale Woodworking and Clockwork, and in today's video I'm going to be restoring a 1910 Seth Thomas 89C movement. The video will be in 3 parts. I hope that everyone enjoys this video, so let's get started. This is a circa 1910 Seth Thomas adamantine clock. There was a little damage to the veneer finish, just a few chips that I was able to repair, and I'm getting ready to do some more repairs to the clock. On the inside of the bezel there is one of the retaining clips for the glass that is loose, so we'll have to solder this back in just to help retain the glass a little bit better. And then also on the back of the clock, as you can see, the movement is quite dirty, and it will keep time, but it is running very, very slow. So we're going to be pulling that movement out and cleaning that. We'll run it through the ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll determine if any bushings are needed to repair the movement and see if we can get it running and keeping accurate time again. There was also a little damage at the bottom of the casing right here where the bottom was cracked, and we were able to repair that as well. But in order to start removing the movement, I will have to move the washer and nut at the bottom, and we'll remove the gong, and then we'll get ready to remove the movement. So we'll start removing the gong. And now that the gong is removed, we will be able to remove the movement from the clock. Okay, we're now going to move on to removing the movement, and real quickly I'll show you how the movement is held in. I'm not sure if you can see it really well, but there are 2 screws at the top that hold the top of the movement in, and there are 2 screws down here at the bottom that hold the bottom part of the movement in. Also, this retaining clip is holding the pendulum arm. That clip allows you to safely move the clock without damaging the pendulum arm or the pendulum spring at the top. This is an 89C movement that was used by Seth Thomas in some of their adamantine clocks. They also used a 4.5 movement in much earlier clocks that date earlier than this. These movements had a bell that would ding on the half hour, and they also have a hook and warning pin that initiates a count wheel for the hours. And this clock, like I said, still works. It just is running slow and needs a good cleaning. So we'll go ahead and initiate the hour and the hour strike here. Now before we can remove the movement, we're going to have to turn the clock around to the front, and we're going to have to remove the retaining pin on the front of the dial, which hold on the hour and minute hands, and we'll have to remove that before the movement can be removed from inside the clock. Okay, now we'll go ahead and remove the pin from the hour and minute hands. And sometimes it's in there quite tight, so we'll try to pull again. So there's the pin. We'll go ahead and set that to the side, and we'll pull off the minute hand first, which you need to be careful pulling these off because you can bend them. Get a screwdriver to help get that off. Again, remove these carefully because they can bend. And take your time as you remove these. Alright, we're going to go ahead and try to remove the clip first. That way we can try to ease the hour hand off. There you go. Now we close the front, and we'll go ahead and move to the back, and we will remove the movement by unscrewing the 4 screws. We'll reach in and take those screws out. And we'll also want to undo our pendulum clip down here. We'll go ahead and do that before we proceed too much further. Reach in there and remove that screw. That one's just a little bit harder because of the escapement wheel. So just let that one fall. Have to take it out. Yes, that's got the removement out of there, so let's go ahead and loosen these others. And this movement will potentially fall. You want to remove it very carefully from the clock. As you can see, the movement is now gone, and now we can get ready to proceed with our cleaning of the movement. Okay, now I've moved the movement over here to the workbench. We're going to go ahead and get started by turning to the back of the movement first and doing one of the first things you should do, which is to remove the suspension spring that is attached to the pendulum arm, so that you do not damage it, because if you do tilt the movement backwards, or the pressure is put on this pendulum stem, it could break the spring. So we're going to remove that by pulling down, and then out of this little support, and then we're going to pull it through the crutch and remove the pendulum spring. And I'm going to go ahead and set that over here in my storage bucket. Now once we do that, we can go ahead on this 89 movement, and we can go ahead and tilt it down, and we are going to remove this little bell. The bell, of course, chimes on the half hour, as we said before, and we're going to go ahead and start removing that by loosening up the nuts. I'm going to take those off, set that off to the side, and also put that in our storage container as well. Now that we have that, as you can see, there is still some power to the mainspring that runs the pendulum. Like we said again, the movement does run, but it's just not keeping accurate time because it does need to be cleaned, and any repairs that need to be made, we're going to do that after we clean it, so we can see if any bushings are needed. So again, we've removed the pendulum spring, we've removed the bell, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get this set up on some supports, so that we can get ready to let the mainsprings down. We're going to have to tighten this one up in order to get a clip around it. The mainsprings are one of the things you certainly want to take seriously, because these can easily put an eye out. They can easily do damage to your hands, and you should never remove one of these without having a safety clip, which is one of these here that goes around this mainspring while you're letting it down. So we are going to get ready to do that, so that when we do start loosening the nuts up that hold the movement together, that we can do it safely without any kind of injury to yourself or damage to the movement, because these mainsprings could do a lot of damage to these very fragile pinions and clock wheels, and the clock teeth can very easily bend. So we're going to go ahead and get set up for that, and we'll get ready to start removing the mainsprings and the rest of the clock movement once we can get everything set up. Okay, I went ahead and got the movement support set up so we could raise the movement off the work table. But just real quickly looking at the movement, there is a good bit of grease and a lot of looks like, just dirtiness and around the movement, and you can definitely tell it needs a really good cleaning. A lot of these oil sinks in the movement, you can tell have, looks like some of the oil has, started to gum up, which would explain why the movement is, even though it's running, is starting to slow down. Just to give you an example, when running this movement, it was losing about every hour about 10 to 15 minutes of time, so it is running pretty slow. Now, as we let these mainsprings and things down, I'll show you the springs that you will release in order to let those down. As we use the let down tool, we'll show you that. There's going to be some springs and things that we're going to have to be very careful with that are fragile as we dig into the movement. So there's a lot of things to show you. So we'll go ahead and just kind of show you a little bit of the movement real quick in terms of what we're talking about with grease. As you can see here, just a lot of grease around the mainspring, up around some of these pivot points where in the oil sinks there is just a lot of dirtiness, and it's very similar on the back of the movement as well. A lot of dirtiness around the winding arbors, and so very usual for a movement of this time period in terms of the age of that. So we are going to get ready to start cleaning that, and we'll start doing that first by, like we said, taking our let down tool, and I'll show you that, and we'll get ready to get these mainsprings ready to remove. Now, these let down tools are very dangerous if you're not careful, so you always need to have a tight grip, and you need to wear gloves and safety goggles when you're doing anything with mainsprings. These mainspring arbors here for a Seth Thomas 89C movement, just like all Seth Thomas 89 movements, take a size 5 let down tool, and it works just like a key. And if you don't have a key, these winding and let down tools do a wonderful job as well. So we'll go ahead and get started with that, getting ready to prepare the mainsprings for removal. Okay, now we're going to put on our gloves to start working on the mainspring. So we're going to start off on this side here, which is the strike side of the movement, and we are going to go ahead and wind up this side with our let down tool, and we're going to wind this up enough to try and get the clip around. Okay, so clip is there, what we can do, I'm going to hold that clip in place. I'll try to hold it somewhat. And there is a spring right here, and I can go ahead and try to show you that. There's a spring right there, as you can see inside. And what we're going to do with that spring, this is it right here. We're going to take that spring away from this ratchet wheel on the mainspring arbor here for the strike side, and we're going to let that down in order to let that mainspring down. So we got our clip in place, our mainspring tool in place. This is somewhat tricky to hold on to everything. So as we work on the spring here, be very careful. As this can kick back on you very quickly. Get a good angle here to work on this. Okay, as you can see, the movement wants to kick on us. That's how much power is in this tool. So we're going to have to grab our clip, make sure that it is on there appropriately. As we let this down, and I'm going to let it slide in my hand. Okay, and now the clip is around it. I can show you that as well. As you can see right here, we have put our clip around that mainspring, and that thing still has a tremendous amount of power in it, but we'll use the mainspring winder to let the rest of that down here shortly. So we do have that let down, and now we'll work on the time side. Again, you have to be very careful with these. Time side is already wound up a little bit more than the strike side was to start with. Go ahead and wind this up. And we'll try to get our clip around this. Of course, you can see the pendulum now. The escape wheel and the pendulum want to go nuts because we have gotten in and given the mainspring that controls that a lot more power. So now we're just trying to get this clip into place, which there we go. And again, as you're going to see, these things have a tremendous amount of power. So we're going to get in here, put our let down tool in place, grip once again with that tool. I'm Try to make sure you can see what we're doing. We're going to have to come in here again, and we're going to let this spring out. You got to be very careful. Hold on to the movement, because these things are no joke. These mainsprings are not. They are extremely powerful. So again, we let that turn in our hand. Keep a good grip. That's another reason to wear gloves. These gloves protect your hands tremendously. You can see there the power of this movement as I'm trying to get the clip in place. And you do want that clip in place. And we'll let that go the rest of the way down. And there we go. Again, the mainsprings are just, they're powerful. You do not want to mess around with those too often. They will do a number in a heartbeat to your hands, to your eyes, to any body part like your arms, and also to the, could very well damage the movement. So as you can see here, this is the mainsprings are now clipped up, and I'll show you a little bit about the movement real quickly. If you look here on this side here is what we call the time side. You have the main wheel that's on the on one of these mainspring arbors, and as you can see, this is the time train. It goes up, and you have each wheel that leads up to the escapement wheel. This wheel here, along with this wheel right inside that's hard to see, controls the minute and hour hands. And then on this side, you have a count wheel that's part of the strike system. As you can see here, this lever goes in and out of each of these notches. So right here, as we can see, this count wheel, for instance, you've got a count wheel that would go, would count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go to rest. So again, this count wheel does tell the clock with the work of this lever what time to chime on. Behind that is the mainspring wheel on the mainspring arbor here, as you can see. And we can see, you can see the wheels moving. This leads up through several wheels, one here, and as we turn to the side of the movement, you have some more wheels here. This all is interconnected. You have an air governor at the top, and all that is interconnected to run the strike side. As you can see here, here's a strike arm that strikes the gong, and this here strikes the bell on the half hour, and that is all tied in here to this strike system and to the wheels that control the minute and hour hands. So even though they're two separate trains of wheels, they do tie in together and work together through the time side as well, because the time side does control the minute and hour hands, and there are some levers inside here on the minute and hour hand pinion that will, or the pivot stem that will turn and raise these levers to all work in conjunction to strike half hour and on the hour. So now we're going to get ready to work on removing parts of the movement. So we're going to get set up for that and get started. Okay, I've gone ahead and removed the movement supports that elevated the movement in order to start taking the movement apart, because we are going to have 4 nuts that we have to loosen up. And also on the back here, we're just going to rest it and let it angle. We do have a screw here that helps hold on this little bracket that holds the bell, so we're going to remove that screw and put that in our storage container. That way when we remove this nut, we will now be able to reach that easily. Another thing we'll want to do is to go ahead and remove the piece from on the hammer arm, and that is because when we clean this, we do not want this hammer device on, because this old rubber here that works with the that hits on the gong that kind of cushions the strike. The cleaner can do a number on that rubber. So we're just going to screw that back in so we don't lose the screw. We're going to go ahead and put that in our storage container as well. Now these are 1/4 inch nuts, so we are going to go ahead and start loosening this up. The other thing we'll want to do prior to that is to also look at some of the springs that are attached. There is a spring that is attached here. These springs, what their job is to support these levers that strike. So we're just going to loosen that up, and that does support the levers down in here that are part of the strike system. There's another on the back here, and you want to be very careful with these. They can be very fragile. You can replace these. You just have to have the supplies to do so if they break. But just be very careful, as these are somewhat fragile. And we're just taking our time. You can see that is wrapped a couple of times. We're gonna, there we go, I'm gonna loosen that up. And down here below the hammer arm is another one. It actually is part of the hammer arm. And then there's going to be another here that supports, that goes to this half-hour bell strike. So I'm just going to try to be extremely careful taking these out, because like I said, they are very, very fragile spring wire, and we just want to be extremely careful taking these off. So let's see if we can get to this one just a little bit easier. There we go. Just kick that out of that hole so that we can go ahead and remove that. There we go. And this one here, we're just going to try to work this screwdriver in here to see if we can get under the end of the spring wire, because it is somewhat tight here around this movement. And of course the hammer strike is pretty close to it. It makes it a little harder to get to. And let's see what we can do here. See if we can work this up without breaking. break. Just want to be very careful taking these springs loose. And here we go. We're getting around it now. Finally able to get it turned. So now we can kind of take this here. We're just going to try to pull this down to get it out of the way of everything else. There we go. So our springs are removed. So now we're going to go ahead and take our movement and we're going to tilt it forward again, and this time we are going to remove or loosen up these nuts, which can be very tight. Okay, so now we have those, or they're starting to work loose. And what we're going to want to be able to do here is we want to slowly take some things apart. First of all, this here is the adjustment for the pendulum from fast to slow on the front. It's tied into this little stem here, and that controls the speed of the pendulum. That's going to have to be removed. And also, as you can see here, there is a screw here that helps hold the movement together. So we're going to go ahead and loosen that one up and put it in our storage bucket. Also, I'm going to go ahead and remove the screw. And I do have some tweezers that make this just a little bit easier to work with. So we may be getting those out here in just a few minutes. Put all that in our storage container. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we are very slowly going to take apart the movement. Here's one of our nuts. We're going to set those to the side. We'll be using those not only when we put the movement back together, but also we'll be using the nut to help put in the wheels to check for whether they are, need bushings or not. So we're just going to push that nut out right there. Got stuck in my socket, and that is something that sometimes happens. So tried to knock it out, didn't work. Tried to unscrew it on the screw, it didn't want to work. So slowly take this apart. Okay, so there's our 4 nuts off of the movement. Now you very slowly, as you can see here, some things are already loose. We're very slowly going to start removing. As you can see here, this is the crutch and the verge on that meets the escapement wheel. Be very, very careful here. This is the support that holds the bell. Go ahead and slowly remove this. So there's the back plate. As you can see here, we can look at some of the components of that back plate. You can see a lot of oil here. A lot of oil. Let's see if we can go ahead and clean some of that off. You can see a lot of oil on the rag. So those are the kind of things we need to clean up really good, and we'll be checking on the inside of the movements and the outside of the movements for any damage to the bushings or anything that needs to be cleaned. So again, you see the grease coming off. So it is a very it is a dirty movement here. So we'll work on those things. Let's go ahead and put that part of the movement back in. And as you can see here, this is with most of the wheels still intact. Again, you kind of want to make note of where these go back to. I've already taken pictures and noted where the wheels go, in addition to some of the other 89 movements I have tinkled with a little bit, tinkered with those. And then so we're going to go ahead and get ready to start removing some of these wheels. Now, one of the first things I'm going to go ahead and take out is the wheel that controls the, or not the wheel that controls, but this is the strike wheel for the bell. As you can see, there's the spring we removed. It's a very fragile piece of metal, so we want to take care of that. A lot of these wheels, as you're going to see here, are intertwined. This wheel is the escapement wheel, and we will look at all of these after we clean them and inspect and look for any damage, as well as polishing some of the pivots before we look at bushing work. So these are wheels here from the time side. So what we'll do as we go through these is we're going to go ahead and start separating any wheels that look similar or the same. And the reason for that is to help us in putting this back together. So a lot of times when I do clean movement parts, I do like to separate my time side from my strike side, just to make sure that everything is going back together. So what we will start doing here is making sure that all of our wheels, as we put them in our bucket, are going to be separated by time and strike. We're going to go ahead and remove this mainspring arbor. As you can see there's that with the mainspring. We'll re-engage that spring, because we'll have to have that in order to operate the mainspring winder. So we'll get ready to look at those. So again, you want to make sure that these are kept separate because of their winding direction. Here is the wheel that controls the hammer. Here's another time side wheel. As you can see here, just a, I'm not sure if you can see that really well. Let me see if I can get it over there. You go. Just a very dirty wheel. Those lantern pinions in there definitely need to be cleaned. Up here we can go ahead and put that on the right side. This is the air governor. Pivots definitely are dirty. You can see all the grease coming off on my hand. So this is a very dirty movement. This is the wheel that controls the warning lever. You can see there's a little spot there for the warning lever. So go ahead and put that in our bucket over here. Some of this stuff is going to start tying together. This is the wheel that works in conjunction with the hour and minute hands. We'll kind of put that toward the middle. And of course this is the arbor here for the hour and minute hands. As you can see, that does come apart, and we will clean it that way. Again, just a ton of grease, just gummed up oil on this movement. This wheel here, see if we can work this out. There we go. This wheel here helps control the lever on the count wheel, and it's also intertwined with the lever that works with the this lever's for warning. This lever tells the lifts up with the lever on the hour and minute hand pinion that tells the clock when to strike. So all of this stuff works together in conjunction. And of course, as you can see here, here's the lever that, and all the grease coming off my hands. It's a very dirty movement. I know I've said that a bunch already. But again, here is the lever that works with the count wheel. And then of course we'll go ahead and remove the mainspring from the strike side. Again, we'll work on these springs and get them ready so that when we are on the mainspring winder to let these all the way down, we can go ahead and do that. And then here, again, another wheel, part of the strike side, very, very dirty. Just, I don't know if you can see that there, but just along that pinion, there we go. Bad camera angle. Along that pinion there, just it's just very dirty. And then here, this count wheel is held on by a clip. And the way to take this clip off is just to take your screwdriver, and we're just going to ease this clip off. Put that in the bucket, and then we can take the count wheel off of the movement. As you can see here, the count wheel, again, a lot of grease, a lot of oil. And some of the oil, as we said, has really started to gum up and cause the movement to run slow. So here's the front bracket of the movement. And again, we're going to clean all of this in an ultrasonic cleaner with some solution that is made for cleaning clock parts. And then we're going to, after that's done, we'll come back and inspect all of these pivot points where those pivots that are part of each wheel come through the clock movement, and we'll determine if they need to be replaced, because if any of these, after we clean it and we clean out all the oil and the grime, if they have any egg shape to them, or the wheels have way too much movement from side to side, that means that it will need to be rebushed with some brass bushings. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to ready this movement for cleaning.